So first of all, everyone, welcome to Grief as a Portal for Love. To begin, I'd like to invite all of you to close down your eyes for a moment. We're just going to do a short meditation to start to orientate ourselves towards this topic, this energy. So inviting you all, if you haven't already, to close down your eyes, whether you're listening live or on the recording. And to feel the contact between you and the seat or something that you're lying on. Inviting you to feel the support, the unconditional support, this ground that has supported you your whole life and will continue to support you until your very last breath. And if you're aware of any sounds in the room, that's quite okay. Perhaps they help you to go deeper. And inviting you all to come into your heart space. And if it's easier for you to do so, placing a hand on your heart. And just noticing the connection, the way that you do or don't feel your heart beating, the pace, the rhythm. Inviting you to become aware of the life that moves through your body, the blood, the bones, the muscles. And while you're there, I want to read a poem to you, a brief poem. I'm going to read it twice because it's so brief. And it's called The Well of Grief by David White. Those who will not slip beneath the still surface on the well of grief, turning down through its black water to the place we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink, the secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness glimmering the small round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. Those who will not slip beneath the still surface on the well of grief, turning down through its black water to the place we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink, the secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness glimmering the small round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. So in the spirit of that poem, wherever you are with that, inviting you all to open your eyes and start to come into contact perhaps with others in the room with a soft gaze. I'm really inviting all of you to meet each other with as much reverence and devotion as feels authentic and true for you. Some of these men you will know, most likely, and some you might not. So just greeting a stranger with the knowing that we're all souls here.
So welcome, brothers and sisters, to Grief, a Portal for Love, the source from which we drink. Thank you for showing up today. This is Graham Goff, co-steward of Emergence Brotherhood, will be facilitating at Emergence Brotherhood Montreal for the first time landing in Canada this November. And I'm Gabriel, organizer of Emergence Brotherhood Montreal, and yeah, just been participating and assisting these guys in the last few years and getting some of their medicine. And yeah, the idea was to bring the magic of Graham on screen, and one of his key theme in what I was in what I've been remarking and seeing throughout those retreats was something around grief, which to me was holding a history more of something painful that I want to go around and not want to feel the least possible. I would feel it in my life only when it was too much that it could not be felt, but otherwise I would want to go around it. And Graham would talk and talk about the virtues. I mean, talk and share and feel and yes, I could feel how there was something more in there, and it's still something that's very new to me. That's very emerging, and so I'm also full of curiosity for what we'll be sharing today. And so yeah, Graham, grief.
No,
um,
before I get to grief, I just want to introduce you very briefly as well, brother. Gabrielle is, for me, I think one of the most powerful exemplars of service and devotion that I have ever seen in my life. So it's a real honor for me to be on this call with you and to talk about this topic, which is very dear to my heart. And I think also it really reaches the souls of many out there too, who have been longing, I think, to really move through that and to understand the power of grief and what it can do as a kind of evolutionary force.
Thank you, Graham. Just so everyone knows, the idea around the call is it'll end in about an hour, in about at least now 48 minutes. Um, we're going to have a conversation on that theme, and then you'll be invited to share, to comment, to ask questions, to be part of this conversation as well. So probably something like 20 to 30 minutes of conversing, and then you can share, you can come in. Um, and yeah, what I'd love to start with is just asking you around when I said that grief would be a beautiful theme based on all that I know you can provide and and open. Um, you already brought it to love, grief being that portal to love, and I'd love to hear more about how they're both in relationships to each other. Yeah,
Yeah, I think first of all, I'll set my stall out a little bit and tell you, um, being somewhat audacious, what I think love is. So my experience of love is that it's less of an emotion, although you could call it that, or a feeling, but more something that we're in constantly and could be understanding and embodying that particular kind of energy. And it was only really when I first went into grief as an adult that I started to get an understanding that this for me was a direction, it was a pathway, it was a route to love. And love didn't feel at all like how I expected to. It was a complete state shift from who I thought I was into a different kind of being. Um, if I explain very briefly the experience, I was sitting with my long-term partner at the time, and we were watching a documentary, a brilliant documentary called The Trap by Adam Curtis, and he set his stall out early that democracy was actually a kind of infernal machine that made people think that they were getting what they wanted, when really it was just tapping into their base insecurities and greed. And I came into contact with that in myself, and I came into contact with that outside of myself. And I realized that I was utterly inconsolable when I realized the aspect of truth that existed in his framing of this. And I had no choice but to say to my partner, I really need to cry. And she had never seen me cry. We'd been together, I think, 10 years at that point. She'd never seen me cry. And when I stopped crying, and believe me, I couldn't really stop crying. I looked into her eyes. I'd never seen her look at me like that before. She looked at me with a really crisp, clear, pure transmission of acceptance. And then I started to realize, like, wow, this feels very different to how I'd imagined it would feel, and all the defenses that I'd put up somehow in this moment were completely eradicated. It was like a tidal wave. That's the kind of water I would describe it as. So I became curious about grief after that. And it wasn't until sometime later that I'd had a series of different experiences which were in a similar kind of range to this. And then one time I did some deep psychedelic therapy training work. I was actually training to become a practitioner, but the rule of thumb is you can only hold what you've to the depth that you've gone to. And I went to a place from the age of, I think I was 41 at the time, all the way back to 2.5 years of age. And it absolutely rocked me to my core. Was, yeah, I thought I was inconsolable before, but in this experience, I was pleading and I was begging for my mum to come and save me. I was anything, I was everything and anything. Please help. And then eventually I put my hands together and I just prayed to God. And it was the first time that I really meant it. Like first time I truly ever really meant it. And I shared with somebody the other day, it felt like I was praying to God, but from the womb of like the mother. It was a experience from birth to death to everything in between. And then I realized, ah, I've survived. Whatever happened to me in the past, I'm alive. And I felt this electricity just run all throughout my body. The female therapist came over and just gently stroked my hand, and I went into a full-bodied orgasm, like all through this journeying, like consistently and deeply with this grief. I was like, this is the destination. This is what David White speaks about in the poem. This is source for me. This is my journey. So that's my account of my first really deep experience of grief, truly.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Um, yeah, I'm wondering, what does accessing love in that way change in your life from a newfound definition of love, as well as accessing it deeply and more, yeah, I wouldn't say easily, because it's a process. um, but knowing how to access it in some ways, and having a new path to access this newfound love, or this newfound definition of love.
Well, one thing, it means that I can be emotionally current. So I'm not getting stuck in that particular emotion. I might get stuck in other emotions, trust me, but not that one. So when I start to come into contact with it, I understand inherently that it's something that I need to move through my system. And if I move it through my system, then what happens is I come back into a deeper form of presence. And from that place, I can connect. I can connect with you. I can connect with people on the call. I can connect with my wife. I can connect with a person at the bus stop who is going through something. It doesn't mean that I have to, but I have the choice whether I do or if I don't. And then the way that plays out in the work that I do is often people are coming into the center and I get the sense of something that they're feeling because my body starts to activate, and then I can be with them in whatever their experience is with enough distance that I can get close to the fire or I can stay further away. And when I mirror that back to them, then there starts to become not just an understanding of what they're experiencing, but also a connection between us as well. So it's kind of clean use of empathy. compassion as well. One needs compassion on the road of grief and ashes. It's because it's such a punishing path, especially for beings who've been told that it's not acceptable to cry. Boys don't cry. You know, it's such an ingrained message, and certainly even my father, who was a war baby, I can't imagine what kind of horrors he went through. I have some understanding of it and some empathy for it, but it's very much a story of, yeah, you don't cry, don't do that, don't don't move that emotion. You know, we think of tantrums and anger fits and things, and if we were really allowed to continue to express those as children, we might not even be on this call. This might not even be a thing if we really understood like what emotions, how they serve us to be back in contact with who we really are.
Just what you shared around boys don't cry, and how we were told that yeah, it's something as men to not access. I'm just realizing right now that prior to emergence, I don't know if I've ever cried in front of men, and now it now it's happened over and over again, and I'm just realizing I wasn't even thinking of it as grieving. But I remember my one of my first processes being at the retreat when we were talking to our inner child, and I still remember putting that picture in front of me, and it felt as if this child was dead. That I was the one who had killed it, decided to kill it, and put it in the ground, and I was inconsolable, and that was a day after just emergence just barely starting, and me feeling like I was putting on the same armor that I would wear at the fire station, and saying to my friend who brought me there, saying, I don't feel nothing will get through me in that retreat. I've seen everything with this armor on, and nothing will work. Nothing will go through. And he just said, push to your edge and just see what happens. And the following day, I was breaking down, crying in front of this little child that I felt was dead inside of me. And and yeah, that's grieving. I'm just realizing now. And it felt like a liberation, because it felt like reaccessing this piece of myself, saying, hey, I love you, I'll never not take care of you, and I want you there, and I want to give you the space. But it was also hurtful to feel that it was in some ways dead inside. And yeah, just had some flashes of different experience happening throughout the retreat where I accessed that grief, and it was a liberation of some deep energy inside, some stuff that were either stuck or forgotten about, all for this idea of men don't cry, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, but it makes sense as well, because often in the act of not crying, we're suppressing something to be accepted. So it's this kind of rerouting that happens. And I know for me it was around being wanted. You know, I would have done anything to be wanted when I was a little kid. It was it was pretty cruel, actually, some of the things I had to go through to prove to people that I was desirable or worthy of being wanted. And it created a lot of problems for me as I went on through life. So yeah, this kind of grief of not actually getting what you really want, because that's not going to get you to love, is this kind of rewired map of a very shallow surface level experience of something that you want. It doesn't really take you or take one all the way down.
Well, completely. And I remember that was what was hurting me the most, was remembering how I decided to kill this little boy because I thought he was too weird for the outside world to be loved, to receive love. I needed to move towards a different way of being, and that's when I became the tough little teenage boy, and to feel all that weirdness that now I love, and I'm still afraid to show to the world. But it felt like, wow, why would I kill that? This is me. And it's as if I had forgotten that it was part of me, and I'm still afraid to show it. I'll be honest. But at least there's a growing relationship with this little boy inside from that moment of breaking down and crying and realizing I was the one who decided to kill it. And yeah, for this quest for love, for feeling like this weirdness won't be accepted, won't be worthy of being loved. Yeah.
And this is interesting for me to hear as someone who's been on a journey with you is actually this is one of the things I would say is one of the most beautiful kind of qualities that you possess is your ability to crack your heart open, whether it's grief or if it's something else. And that really reminds me actually of part of the journey that I went on with grief was also not just coming into contact with being in love, but also the sense of gratitude that comes when I come into contact with what I didn't have. So I come into contact with all the things I didn't have, and I'm grieving that. And simultaneously, at the same time, I'm being shown everything that I care about and everything that I would stand for and everything that I would die for. Because you know what? It feels like I'm dying anyway. I'm being pulled down deep into the water, which is also my childhood experience as well. Of being pulled into a lake on a winter's day when I was 2.5, and the air leaving my body and the water filling my mouth. Of course, I'm tense. I'm holding on because I'm dying. So it's also can be a very powerful reflection of fundamental childhood experiences. And what I eventually came into contact with was not just fighting for survival, but I'm fucking really, really, really glad to be alive. Like it could have been so different.
Hearing you speak about naming love, naming gratitude as what grief can give access to, I just had a flash of something that happened to me this summer around purpose, where I was led into meditation around love. And we would start with the personal, feeling all the people that we love in our life or that have loved us in the past that are no longer here. And then we moved on to the collective. And I was already breaking down in Christ, feeling that love that I have for these people and the love that they have for me. But when we moved to the collective, and the person leading the meditation would talk about nature, about the planet, about humanity. And when she named the generations to come, I remember I was inconsolable. And and at the same time, it felt I could feel a tremendous amount of love. Uh, I felt blissful, even though it felt painful, and it just felt like it was giving me clarity on what am I here for, and why am I doing the things that I'm doing. And I was inconsolable. In another way, if I didn't access the love and the blissfulness of the moment, it would just have been a painful moment. But it was a very significant one for me in feeling yeah, both the grieving, the love, and the blissfulness that this would bring.
Yeah, I feel that what you're speaking into is a really important piece of when one does start to come into contact with grief is often I would feel the sense of like my head being tilted back almost to the TV screen or the newspaper or the children being bullied in the playground or something, like all the things that I had avoided and not taken a stand for, I hadn't been able to really digest or take into my system. And then I remember feeling like I don't understand these collective pieces that people keep talking about. I don't understand, like, why don't I feel heartbroken about what's happening in Israel, for example, or Gaza? All of these kinds of pieces. And then when I started to come into contact with grief and actually the deeper empathy of the heart and the body, rather than just the perspective and the perception, then I realized like if I could be with this for 100,000 years and it's still going to feel this painful, there's an enormous wellspring of like pain and grief that I believe can be accessed by coming into contact with these collective pieces. And what I'm hearing you say is that you really started to come into contact with those.
Yeah, yeah, definitely feeling you on this, and I can see how it's so much to bear that yeah, I can understand why I would resist going into the depth and feeling that because there is so much to feel there. And like you're saying, it is going to be an inconsolable feeling because there's not enough grieving that can be done to just wipe this all away and wash it all away. but I'm just realizing it takes a lot of courage. Courage meanings core meanings from the heart to be able to go there, and just having this experience this summer makes me want to go back to feeling this. But I'm realizing how, yeah, I need that courage. I need that strength to feel that I'm ready to sit and really feel all that I could be feeling on that collective level. And it just brings me back to, you mentioned gratitude, but I'd love to hear more about it. I remember when we spoke about the potential of doing this webinar together, you said something around gratitude, and we spoke about it just before, um, as potentially this thing that's beyond, at the bottom of grief, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so one of the things I had a lot of problems with when I began the spiritual journey about almost exactly 10 years ago was this notion that I should be grateful and that I should practice gratitude. And I just didn't understand it at all. I was like, well, like I'm grateful for this laptop, I'm grateful for these headphones, I'm grateful for this house. But I just didn't mean it. Like I didn't really feel it. And that made me feel worse. It actually made me feel a lot of shame because I'm being told I should feel grateful for everything that I've got. I should feel grateful, but I don't because I don't have access to gratitude. Gratitude, I believe, is a similar thing to love. It's something that you have access to or you don't yet. It's an embodied feeling as well. So when you do start to get access to it, then it's a good idea to spend time with it and to work with it. But in terms of a practice, I don't believe that you can really practice something that you never had an experience of. So this is partly my invitation with grief, for wherever you choose to explore it, is to do so without an agenda. So anything that you've heard here might be useful or not useful, but the way I always experienced surrender or letting go, which might be considered to be a kind of feminine power, not feminine in the sense of female, but feminine spiritual dimension, is my whatever's on the other side of that doesn't really take too well to agendas or expectations. So somehow the capacity that one has to feel is the thing to address. So seeing how much more emotion you can contain and feel and follow, these are all great kind of wayfinders on the map to the bottom of grief. And what's at the bottom of grief could be different for different people as well. And grief might not necessarily be the journey for you. I have worked with many people who have incredible access to grief, and for them it was partly about being in the grief, but also about being in the anger. So maybe for most people that would be an overlay or a first emotion that they would come into contact, which would be a secondary emotion, but yeah, it can be. And for me, I would say that's currently my journey as well, is coming into contact with a kind of deep burning anger, which I think what it's doing is it's giving me passion. It's making me more passionate about the work that I do and the way that I show up in the world and who I show up for and how I show up for myself too. But on the subject of gratitude, I believe it's an essential property or quality that's available to one when they're really connected and present with themselves on a level beyond the surface. So I don't think that practicing gratitude without the experience of it makes much sense. It would be better to find all the obstacles to gratitude, which are going to be more conditions and conditioning. So what are those things? What are those things that get in your way? Because the practice of gratitude and how that feels versus the deep upwelling of gratitude, which for me is often tears. So I had a little bit of trouble differentiating for a while. I was like, why am I grieving again? I just seem to grieve all the time, and then I came into contact with something a little bit deeper, and I realized, oh fuck, I'm actually really grateful. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for my cat. I'm grateful that we get to have this incredible human experience and to feel all of this and to have the awareness of consciousness which can create evolution. I'm like, okay, that's what I signed up for and that's what I can stand for. I'm grateful to finally be given a purpose.
I remember you mentioning something like, I'm crying, but I'm happy. What is this? What's going on? And yeah, then turns out it's gratitude. Yeah. Um, I'd be curious to invite people in now. I see there's been a question in the chat, but yeah, if anyone wants to unmute themselves, either bring a share, any questions, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, or an experience that you have as well. So this might be like a pot that you want to add to rather than something that you necessarily want to receive.
Hita Devi, it's beautiful to have you here.
Hello, brothers and sister. I have a question, if that's welcome. Yeah. I don't have much experience with actual grief in relation to someone dying, like how we often, normally use that term. Both my parents are still alive. I've never lost someone really, really close to me, and it makes me wonder whether I actually know what it is. So I'd really love to hear either of or anyone's view or thoughts on that in relation to, yeah, how do we, if grief is a portal to love, and I've never experienced grief in the sense that we normally associate grief to be, am I going to find it difficult to really feel love?
Can I ask you a couple of questions, Brian?
Sure.
Did you ever fear to lose anyone?
Yeah, 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 sure.
My sense is with grief is that if you ever feared to lose something or someone in a deep way that maybe brought up anxiety or fear on some kind of level, then that would be enough fuel to go into the process of what it would feel like to truly lose that person. And the reason why I believe I know this is because I recently had that with my wife, and also had that with my mother as well, who's here in body, but she's not here in the sense that she has a advanced dementia. So she's not here. Like her soul is, my sense at least, and I could be wrong, but is that she's not here. So I think if there's anyone in your life that you're afraid to lose, then that would be enough to, if you were to really go deep into a process around that, that would give you, I think, sufficient experience. And I know, because I know you, and I know that there are people in your life that you care about deeply. And if we come into contact with love, then we absolutely have to come into contact with grief. Therefore, because at some point we will lose them. Either we go or they go. Love is being in love is a kind of invitation to grieve and to be heartbroken. I don't think there's any way to really go through life with love unless you're prepared to be heartbroken and devastated.
Mm. Yeah.
Something I'd like to add on this, Ryan, is quick share around this summer another meditation that was on death and facing our death. We were invited into feeling the peoples that have loved us that are now on the other side. And I was thinking of my grandmother, and I was thinking of my that I lost maybe 7, 8 years ago, but also my grandfather that was there with me only for a year and a half. But my mom shared a lot about how he was terminally ill, and so was taking every moment that he had to be with me and carry me. And the person leading the meditation said, remember their touch, because your body knows, your body has felt their touch before. And I could feel my grandma holding me. I could feel my grandfather holding me. I could feel the love that they invested in my being. And I was, again, inconsolable. And I could see that it was giving me access to the depth of the love. My grieving was to the depth of the love that they've invested in me, that I felt from them. And then the meditation moved to something different, where it was more now looking at the people we love in this life that we're saying goodbye to in this process of dying. And it didn't feel much different, because even if they're still there, there's no guarantee. It's life. It's everything's ephemeral. Everything's in the moment. And so the love that I've experienced with them, the level of love that I have for them, there's still the potential to be completely crushed, completely heartbroken for this to never happen again. And I could experience it the same way with the people that, yeah, with my grandfather and my grandmother, as well as the people that are still alive today. So I don't think there's much of a difference between both, like Graham was saying.
Nice. Thanks, Relish.
Thank you, Brian. Any more questions or experiences?
Happy to share. Yeah, I think I'm going to share. Well, my father passed away 32 years ago, and I never grieved him because I had issues with him, childhood traumas and stuff. And it's only in the last few years since I've started therapy that I can absolutely say with certainty, forgive him and love him. I'm not too sure if I've grieved him because time's gone on. But I did a retreat just a few weeks ago, and I've just come back from Ireland from seeing my mother and my cousin. And it felt fantastic actually to connect to them, because my mother's actually terminally ill, but the long-term one that it could affect her in 6 months, or it could affect her in 5 years. It's a long term, but she knows she's poorly, and she's got a good old age. She's 81 this year. So you look at it, it was just absolutely fantastic, actually. So a little bit what you're saying. So I'm grieving the fact that she looks old. I was happy and grateful that she looked great, the best I've seen her look in the last 3 or 4 years as she's been fighting this disease. And I was just grateful to just be there, just sitting around the kitchen table, listening to old stories. So all the emotions that I never think I would have had, but Graham, you just mentioned, from grief to love to gratefulness. I've literally had them all over the weekend, grieving for the fact that my mother's, on the last part of her journey, knowing that we could all be, but she knowingly is. Grateful for the fact that she's still here and she's in good health at this moment in time. And but also grieving for the fact when she's not there, and I'm just trying to go spend more time just flying back, even if it's for a couple of days, just to spend time around the kitchen table. She's chatting about, she's got always lots of friends coming in. So that made me realize that you've got feelings, because one of the issues I thought I had no feelings, no grief, no love, no numbness. Then I realized I've got a lot of it, more than I actually realized. And then when it goes on to your future, I know in one of the retreats, like I said, Ryan did a fantastic, one of the morning practices where I was just feeling the love of my children, and I broke down. Grateful that you've got, children, and the grief that you'd feel if I went first or anything happened, God forbid, happened to those. And then the consciousness of the world where there's so much pain, so many young people getting needlessly leaving us through death or war and destruction. And when I've got two young children, say young adults, you just want them to have a great life for their future and their children to come. Yeah, so you do feel the emotions of what we're doing to the world as humanity, and hopefully we can come through that and come together. But it does feel nice. and lots of things, from being for years thinking I had no grief, I had no emotion, to actually realizing I've got all three in close succession with the people around me, which is my dearest friends and family, and now my fellow brothers and sisters here.
Mm.
So yeah, so that was it was a great topic. I didn't think I had much to share actually, but it's just it's all coming through as you say it. So um, I should let you. I shall leave on that point then. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I think there's something really valuable that you share around the children as well. I'm not a father yet, but I think we can somehow be exemplars for children to show, well, we can learn from them absolutely, but also to show them that it's okay for us to feel and move emotion as well. Like it's not just useful or important, it's critical too. Otherwise we just have to deal with if we're children, we just have to deal with the inheritance of our parents, which is going to happen anyway. But if we can somehow remove the baggage and the burden by coming deeply into contact with grief, gratitude, love, our essence, then we can live that way, and our children can see that that's the way to live. They don't have to change themselves or bend or mold or shape themselves to fit into a program that we subscribe to because we don't want to feel the things that we actually deep down feel. So whatever work or whatever gift we can give ourselves in this life will be felt, reverberating down, cascading through the generations. And then perhaps if you believe in this or not, I don't know, but if we can show up as support in the other realms for our ancestors when they're doing this work, imagine the wisdom that would flow through us and the support that we could provide. And my experience is that my ancestors do support me in this way. The ones who have passed, absolutely. Thank you, Mark.
I can share a few words.
Yeah, please. Joe, hello.
Um, yeah, I guess absolutely the idea that grief and love are two sides of the same coin. Um, Fear of the unknown and gratitude. Um, it really is that essence of the impermanence of all things that bring the love and that bring that gratitude, and knowing that we have no guarantees in life, and also
Joe,
grief.
I don't know if everyone else is, but I'm finding it quite difficult to hear you. I'm wondering if you could turn up the volume a little bit.
I'm at full volume right now. I can just
Is
lean in a
everyone
little more.
else having trouble with the hearing, or is it just me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, if you could lean in a little bit more then, Joel. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say that grief is um, it's not linear. You know, it's cyclical, and I have been in a process of a divorce which began about 18 months ago, and I've moved through so many emotions and feelings of gratitude and feeling that I've moved to certain metrics that I wanted to have in my life of acceptance and everything, and then it seems like it comes back, but there's always an opportunity rather than being stuck in a spin cycle. It's actually this spiral where you have an opportunity to return to these same feelings, but with new eyes and with new visions and with more tools in your toolbox than before. And so for me personally, it's been interesting to watch these cycles of grief come, and they come back into me, and it's like, well, why is this back again? But it's an opportunity for me to really um, work through practicing um, all the tools that I've been given, and everything that I have in order to make to bring that gratitude even more fully and deeper than ever before. Um, my best friend from back home just got a pretty scary diagnosis, and he's gonna have to have a testicle removed in 2 weeks, and he is also just in the beginning stages of a divorce, and I actually officiated their wedding. And so there's this deep grief that's returned to me because I have this deep connection with these friends and this sense of weight that I actually officiated this marriage and blessed it and brought and helped to bring that into fruition, and that now all these cycles seem to be happening in my frame of reference as well. It's very interesting. And then I guess the one last piece is that I am a father, and I've got a son who's going to be 4 in just a few days, and he's so brilliant, and the opportunity for me to be able to share with him what life is about, even at his young age. Yesterday, he was asking me about when I was a little boy, and we were laughing and sharing, and he said something very interesting. He said, "When you were a little boy, I took care of you," and it tripped something in my head about ancestry, and it brought this conversation of reincarnation with him. And I said, there's a lot of people believe that maybe we come back in different bodies, and we get to, maybe one day you'll be my daddy again after I die. And he immediately just burst into tears, and he said, "I don't want you to die. I don't want daddy to die. I don't want mommy to die." And I saw that as an opportunity to just sit with him and sit in that grief with him and really just look him in the face and say, "I love you right now in this moment, and we're always together." And just in as simple of a vocabulary as I could, to explain to him, this life is precious. That's why we are nice to people. That's why we're kind, and we share and we love, because we never know how long we'll have to do this. And so I'm also reparenting myself every day as a parent. And so the love and that grief is right there on both sides all the time, playing itself out every day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Joel. It's really touching to come into contact with the experience with you and your son. Yeah, there's some real wisdom there. Thank you.
Graham, do you have time for a quick share?
I do. We do.
Do. Thank you, brothers, sister. I had a moment today of that grief spiral. I lost my dad 33 years ago, and I still feel the pain now. He when he left the forces, he cut down trees for a living, and I went past some tree surgeons, and it was the smell of sawdust. And all of a sudden, my dad was back there with me. And part of me is, in a sense, so grateful for that memory, that suddenly I could smell him. He was back there. And, he died in his 70s. So I guess he stopped smelling of sawdust kind of when I was 14 or 15. But all of a sudden, straight back with the father that I lost so many years ago. And then the second layer of grief is the reminder of the loss of the father I never had. On one level, he was a beautiful man, and I love him so much. But he wasn't able to look after me in the face of my mother's rage and addictions. And so I also grieve for not just for the person I lost, but for the person he wasn't. And I think my life has been, I think I've grieved sometimes for the person I haven't been. And I'm only just starting to realize now who I am. And so all this grief gets swirled around. and on so many different layers. So I think really that's all I want, all I've got in me actually at the moment. I don't want to, but I hope that might chime or be useful.
Mark, it's always beautiful to feel your heart, and thank you for sharing your grief with us as well when it's so raw and in the
Yeah.
now. Yeah, it's
Thank you,
really
brother.
precious. Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes without saying. Like I'm here for that. It's a pleasure, to have you here. Okay.
I really love what you brought around grief, being swirled around and grieving the person that you haven't been, um, and how it's just bringing us more into alignment and into feeling wow. For example, I remember this summer as well, grieving the times that I haven't loved, I haven't expressed my love to the level that I feel it, and it's just prompting me now. It's just prompting me now to, oops, something happened on my phone, to express this love completely and to not. I don't want to I don't want to resist expressing that love anymore. And so yeah, it's just bringing me more back to my essence, to my alignment, just to feel that grief. And yeah, thank you for this. Um, where you have time and everyone's time boundaries, we have 4 minutes left. So I just want to thank everyone who showed up for this, ready to listen to this conversation on the great potential of grief in freeing our love, in freeing our life expression, in bringing more potential in our life, in bringing our heart forward. It is needed. It is needed in this world. And I'm glad to have you join us and spread the word and allowing all of us to feel that grief, to dive into that well of grief so we can be more truthful, more in love, and bringing all of ourselves humanity. I'd love to hear Graham read the poem again. And just before we close, just to mention, yes, like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, Emergence Brotherhood is coming to Montreal, to Canada for the first time. It feels like the most soul rewarding thing I've done in my whole life to have this land at home for me. And I just wanted to mention that and take that opportunity. And that's it. I'd love you to read this again. And yeah, handing on to
Yeah,
you.
yeah, beautiful. What I'll do is I'll read it, and then I'll invite us all to leave the room silently and just to take this poem with us throughout the rest of the day. So, if you gently allow your eyes to close. So this is The Well of Grief by David White. Those who will not slip beneath the still surface on the well of grief, turning down through its black water to the place we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink, the secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness glimmering the small round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. Thank you, everyone.